So good evening everyone, and I extend you a very warm welcome to our event tonight, a conversation with Oji Udezue. My name is Gráinne Oates, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you here tonight. Before I begin, I would like to do an acknowledgement to country. We respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which Swinburne's Australian campuses are located in Melbourne's east and outer east. And we pay our respect to their elders past, present and emerging. We also acknowledge and respect the traditional owners of lands across Australia, their elders, ancestors, cultures and heritages. And we recognise all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders nations. So, just a few housekeeping things, if I may, before we begin. If everybody could please turn off their phone or put it on silent for the session tonight. We will also be taking photos and videos, so if you would rather not have your photograph taken, just please let the event organisers know. So for tonight's event, I will shortly invite Oji to the stage, and he will present for 20 minutes. Rachel from the AGSE will then do an interview for, again, about 20 minutes, and we'll then follow up with questions from the room. And we can then all mingle for a while following that. So before I do invite Oji to the stage, I'm going to, now that I'm up here, I'm going to grab the mic myself. So I'm Gráinne Oates, as I mentioned. I'm the CEO and founder of Quitch, an AI-powered gamified mobile learning platform born here at Swinburne University. And we now deliver learning across the globe. Oji and I met a number of years ago, and he's been my coach and mentor and friend since then. The entrepreneur journey, it's a hard one with many highs and indeed many lows. He has not just been there during those good times, but been an absolute rock through those tough times, even if one happens to ring him on Independence Day or Thanksgiving. This week we welcomed Oji to Melbourne, where he has spent the week mentoring and coaching myself and that fabulous Quitch team. Met with our advisory board, Michael Langhammer is here tonight, and Carolyn Mendel, and also Michael Fagan. We also had the great pleasure of having some fantastic meetings discussing innovation with the Swinburne Innovation Studio team led by Werner. At Quitch, Oji has challenged us to be the best we can be, the best in the industry, the best educational platform in the world. We are up for that challenge, and we could not be more excited about where our future stands and where we are today. A little bit of a background on O himself. He comes from humble beginnings in Nigeria, and at the age of 19 he moved to LA, where he did not know a single person. And I asked the question, does that drive an entrepreneurial spirit? He went on to graduate from the University of California, Berkeley, and Columbia University with an MBA, and has worked in most of the world's largest companies. He is an esteemed AI product expert, and most recently, the Chief Product Officer at Typeform. He is a visionary, he is an entrepreneur, an innovator, an author, a speaker, investor, and a person of great character. I discovered over the last while that Irish and Nigerian people have quite a lot in common. We love to tell stories, we love a good laugh, and we certainly have no fear of hard work. Oji has taken companies from zero revenues to millions of revenues, from millions of revenues to more than $1 billion in revenue. His influence in the tech world extends well beyond the confines of his formal roles. He's a seasoned leader in product development and strategy, and his journey to date is marked by an unwavering commitment to innovation, education, and the empowerment of communities through technology. He is well known globally for his willingness to share his wisdom, his knowledge, and his experiences guiding startups and individuals in navigating the complexities of the tech industry. He doesn't accept the status quo, and he's driven to achieve his dreams. He routinely leaves highly paid, secure roles to take on new challenges. And I encourage you to ask him about some of those upcoming projects he is taking on, including a venture studio, and will soon launch a book to give back. You're probably wondering, wanting to know why a woman from the northwest of Ireland and a man from Nigeria have come together in a pub in Melbourne to talk about product, innovation and entrepreneurship. It is a great story, but it's one you're going to have to wait for until we get to the bar later, and we can chat about it then. For now, can you please join me? It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Oji Udezue.
Hi everyone, how are you doing?
Good.
A little more bass in your voice. How are you doing?
Good.
Oh, fantastic. That's the Melbourne spirit that I love. What I learned from that is that I should always have Gronya introduce me whenever I'm trying to speak about something. Hello everyone. I got here about a week ago, and I've had the pleasure of meeting many people from Melbourne. Obviously, Gronya has been my Sherpa. And you have a beautiful city. I've been here before, but I was so deep into work the last time that I didn't get to enjoy it. But I did a little more, not as much, because I still have work to do, but I enjoyed it a little more. I have only 20 minutes, so I will try to get through this very quickly. So what's happening is that, you know, while I'm here, I'm a little bit of a puppet. So I've been told what to talk about. So I'm just going to skip through a few interesting topics I've been told are interesting. If it's not interesting, it's her fault. And so let's see, let's go to the next one. All right. Let me talk to this slide. So Enugu is the city I was born in in Nigeria. It's a city of over 1 million people, born like, you know, super middle class, but I guess it depends on the society you're in. I mean, Melbourne is a much richer city. And over years, months, I eventually made it to Microsoft. I left in 2012, and most recently the Chief Product Officer at Typeform. So it's been a very interesting journey. Lots of extremes as I've gone through. Gronya told you a little bit about landing in Los Angeles at the University of Southern California for my PhD and not knowing a soul around 19. I didn't get the PhD, I got a master's and I moved on and went to Microsoft actually. But again, we'll do that at the bar. My name is Oji Udezue. This is how to pronounce it phonetically. Oji Udezue. My name is interesting, it's very rare. Oji is the Iroko tree in West Africa. It's like a California redwood. I don't know what the biggest tree is in Australia, but it's culturally significant to us. It means strength and wealth. I used to hate the name because I'm like, no one else has this name. You know, when you're a kid, you just want to fit in. But as I grew older and I understood what it meant, I became proud of it. So yeah, that's me. That's how to pronounce me. You know, I won't go into this. These are some of the brands I'm associated with: Atlassian, Calendly, Microsoft, Twitter, Bridgewater. That's something that most Australians wouldn't know, but that's the largest hedge fund in the world. Maybe people know about Ray Dalio. Anyone know Ray Dalio? Okay, he's the founder of Bridgewater. These are places that I've done a lot of mentoring in. So Techstars, Div Inc., which is an accelerator that focuses on non-normal entrepreneurs. In the United States, that's like women, people of color. They sort of don't start companies as much as other people. And so I focused on that because I love helping people who don't have as much opportunity. And then Kernel Fund is a fund I started almost 10 years ago to invest in startups in Africa. So I'm very interested in the other side of the world as well as non-standard founders. Okay. All right. So my brand is really, well, I don't want to call it a brand, but it's like the thing that I try to do is I try to talk about not just what people see, but what's behind what people see. And so I'm going to skip around a little bit with some of these topics. And and try to share with you some of the wisdom. So the first thing I'll talk about is entrepreneurship, right? And what it takes to be an entrepreneur. If you're a student here, just raise your hand a little bit. Okay? If you're a student who's interested in entrepreneurship, raise your hand. Oh, okay, most of them. If you're faculty, and just raise your hand as well. Okay, faculty interested in entrepreneurship. Okay, fantastic. And if you're already like working in industry and not working in university, raise your hand. Okay, working in industry, interested in entrepreneurship. Oh, fantastic. Well, this is good. I'll talk about this a little more, but I think one of the things I was going to talk about is what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Like what characteristics do you need to have? I've started a company before, I think circa 2013 after I left Bridgewater. I wouldn't say I was super successful. We made money, but after 2.5 years, I figured out that it wouldn't be worth like $100 million or whatever. And I said, okay, I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna bang my head against the wall for the next 5 years. And so that's when I found Atlassian and I went to Atlassian. But it's a very interesting experience because you have to see the future very differently. Like it's literally like shaping the world according to your vision, according to what you see, according to the problems you see. And you either want to capture opportunity for yourself or for others. And for me, I really wanted to just shape the world in my image because I saw a problem. I won't get into the exact problem I was trying to solve, but that's what it means. It's a little bit like madness, right? There's a little madness to be an entrepreneur because what you're basically asserting is that every chance of failure in front of you, you're going to ignore for a little while, and you're just going to go for it. And it can be lonely sometimes. You need a lot of support around you. But obviously, the act of creation itself is very satisfying to a lot of people. Now, I'll tell you the secret to entrepreneurship is that most people don't start at all, right? They have this drive, this idea, and so on and so forth, but they won't take the first step. And part of it is that they're not mad enough, right? They see all the reasons to not do it, and that makes them afraid. Now, by the way, it's not that they are completely mad, it's just that most entrepreneurs will put a blinker on failure in front of them and just go for it. And that's why they succeed, because they just won't accept reality. But regardless of whether you're super clear-eyed about the impediments in front of you, one of the key things is to get started. Create the company, talk to your first customer, build a prototype, talk to more customers, and so on and so forth. If you get started, you will often find the conviction and the impetus, the velocity to keep going. So this is very important. So if you have an idea, if you have a problem you want to solve, the best thing I can tell you, aside from madness, is to just get started, take the first step, keep going. The distance between me and my startup, the first idea I had, the first time I did the design was 2 years before I started, right? But I did the design and I saw what it could be. And so that's very important. All right, replicating entrepreneurial ecosystems. Totally different topic. But this is something that is usually interesting to universities, to entrepreneurs, is like, how do I stay in an ecosystem where there's a lot of people supporting me, right? How do I, if you're a city and you're, Victoria, you're like, how do we become like Silicon Valley specifically? Now, the reason I know a little bit about this is that when I moved to New York, Connecticut, and I started my startup, I was looking for an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And for whatever reason, I got involved with the governor of Connecticut who was trying to build Silicon Valley up in the northeast of the United States. And so I sat on some advisory boards and so on and so forth. Now, after doing that for a couple of years, I figured out something I want to pass on to you. And that is, there are probably 3 ingredients, right, to build an entrepreneurial ecosystem. Now, I know there are no policy people here, but Werner's here. Maybe he's a very powerful, I think, person. So maybe I'm just talking to you right now. Right, so the first ingredient is you need a technology school, right? So check, Swinburne. And part of the reason is that you need to pump out people who have knowledge and skill and motivation. In the Bay Area, which is the poster child for one of these things, you have Berkeley. UC Berkeley mints out a lot of really smart engineers. You have Stanford that mints out a lot of smart engineers as well. Surprisingly, it happens in Los Angeles, it happens in the Northwest, where Microsoft and Amazon are. UW, University of Washington, is a really good entrepreneurial university. Of course, Seattle is a very storied city, right, about entrepreneurship. So that's important. Why did Connecticut fail? The University of Connecticut was not a very good engineering school. So I just, after a while, I figured that out. In fact, that's why I left the Northeast of the United States, is I'm like, I can't hire great engineers out here. The second thing is a great city. Urban centers are really good. And by the way, you'll be surprised, they've been like this for centuries, right? Look at Venice, look at Rome, look at, like, a lot of innovation happens in urban centers. Why is that? Because people from all walks and all backgrounds and all kinds of different ways of thinking are colliding and collaborating. So it's super important that there's a good urban center. And then the last one, which might be a challenge for Melbourne, is venture capital. They have to be mad people who are willing to throw money, mad rich people, I guess, or whatever, who are willing to take flyers on these startups. So those are, I think, the three key ingredients. Everywhere I've seen this happen, Seattle, New York, actually New York isn't very good, it just has a lot of money. Austin, which is where I live, you know, you have this stuff. Okay, let me do another switch. AI. How am I doing with time? Am I like lagging? What's going on?
Not 5 minutes.
Oh my God. All right, artificial intelligence. I should have just skipped some things. So this is a big topic. Right? Who's interested in AI? Who's like worried about it and so on and so forth? It's funny for AWS people here. I have lots of really good friends at Amazon. And some of my friends are PMs who are working on all your AI stuff. Like they are literally my friends that come to my house and we talk about not your secrets, but at least what they're doing. So the way to think about artificial intelligence as we progress is imagine everyone on the planet, in the same way we have calculators, has a human level intelligence. What does that mean? Someone who has a bachelor's degree with them all the time. But this human level intelligence has a copy of the internet in their brain and they're accessible to you every day, every second. And this is way beyond, you have a phone and you can Google stuff, right? This is different. It is contextually beside you. This is what will happen within a decade if we can get it cheap enough. But I guess people think, oh, wow, you know, I don't know, does anyone know the Jetsons, the future, all that stuff? Right, and so where's my flying car? Where's my robot? Well, it turns out we got that robot. It's just not physical, right? It's not physical. It's ChatGPT, basically. And this is the worst it'll ever be, but that's what you have now. By the way, if you're not using this stuff weekly, you probably should, all right? And you really should. So I guess in the context of education, though, if you have that, if you imagine everyone on the planet had, that's not true yet, because it's not cheap enough. But if everyone on the planet had that, how would that change education? What would that mean? When was the last time you had to calculate like a very complex thing in your head? No one does that, right? Because we have calculators. If you have contextual intelligent assistance with you all the time, education changes immediately, right? Because education is sort of still organized with vestiges of, like 19th century farm, 19th and 20th century farm economies. You know, you take 10 years to get through school, holds, sort of controls the supply of labor, and you learn some general stuff, and then employers complain that you don't know what you're doing. They have to train everybody, and they're annoyed at that, and that stuff is happening all the time. So bottom line is education is changing, especially with AI. Those two things are separate, but I'm saying that in the context of a university. And universities like Swinburne, I've talked to like Swinburne, Edge, and so on and so forth. Reese over there, delightful man, and very inspired with what he's doing at Edge. And universities that lean into how these things will evolve are going to do so well. Amazon is a good example. Amazon's ethos is let's make everything as cheap as possible because then we can sell to more people, right? It's not a premium thing. It's like they just want scale, right? And it's a scale company. And there are more people in the world who are not getting education than people who are getting education. And so making education more accessible, more contextual, actually will increase the volume of money spent on education if people will only adapt to it. All right? And so this is very crucial because as education change, people like Swinburne have to change as well with them. All right. Now, I've already started talking about this, and I am not shitting on education at all. I'm actually the poster boy for formal education. Do you know how many degrees I have? Can anyone guess? Just me? If you know Nigerians, you know that it's a lot. I have 4, right? I have like 3 graduate degrees. And actually, I'm a sucker for punishment because I've already told Gronya that I'm going to get a PhD in cognitive neuroscience at some point just for fun. And so I am not against structured education. But I do know a few things. The cost of information is effectively 0 in 2024. The cost of transmission of information is almost effectively 0. The lure of social-based learning is so high. How much do people learn from TikTok versus a class? Will anyone guess? Right? How much do you learn from TikTok? The young people are smiling because they spend like hours on TikTok. Is that right? And you know, we laugh at it because it doesn't feel like learning, but it is. You're learning about stuff and you learn about the world. So skills-based learning is going to take over knowledge-based learning very quickly. And the best institutions of higher learning, like I said, will adapt to this. So that's interesting. That's a whole other conversation to have. So my partner and I are publishing a book to sort of codify some of the almost 50 years of experience between us about how to build the fastest growing, most valuable software companies based on all the places we've been: Microsoft, Twitter, T-Mobile, Time Publishing. These are all sort of a cross-section of things. I'm not going to spend too much time in the book because I feel like I'm shilling it, but if you want to go check it out, you'll actually get like a little gift if you sign up. You should check it out with the QR code. It comes out this summer, and no one gets rich off a book usually. You just get the right to talk about stuff. And so I'm actually going to make a version of the book free because I want people in India and Africa to read it without having to go to Amazon to get it. So I'm very, very excited about that. I will dwell on something. So one of the things that I want you to do is go to this QR code. Actually, for the entrepreneurs amongst you, after spending years and years building B2B startups, I had an epiphany about how to think about whether the problem you're trying to solve will turn into a very big, big company. It's really a simple framework that talks about the frequency at which people use your software and whether it's used by everyone, meaning everyone in the company, or a department in the company. It's a very, very interesting idea, very interesting concept that's good for founders, also good for investors. You should check it out. We can't get into it at the moment. And I did all the research to make sure, see if it was predictive, and it seemed like it was very good at being predictive. Now, venture scale. It turns out that entrepreneurs are created in at least 2 versions, yeah? Most entrepreneurs, about 82%, create companies that essentially just replace their income, right? They want autonomy, they don't want to have a boss, and they want to live comfortably or maybe get a little rich, if that makes sense. And that's okay. This is a very important part of driving an economy, and giving people autonomy is part of well-being and so on and so forth. But that's not venture scale, right? Like if you have what is called a lifestyle business and then you go raise venture money, you will essentially waste your venture money and you go into debt and so on and so forth. And so it's very important to tell the difference. Venture scale is when your startup essentially can do somewhere between 10 and 100x the value that you put into it, right? Think Amazon, think Microsoft, think Canva, think Atlassian. those things sort of multiply, and these are the things that drive huge change in the economy because there's job creation and so on and so forth. So it's very, very important when you are building a company to think about what scale it is for you. If you're like an investor like me, this is the most crucial question. In fact, one of the things I'm doing this summer is building a venture accelerator in Nairobi and Lagos. And all this week I've been complaining to Grania that I've been staying up and doing meetings. Well, what have I been doing at midnight? Is selecting companies for that accelerator. And so this is the biggest question in front of us is it venture scale or is it not venture scale? What problem are they trying to solve? Why am I bringing this up? Because I think it's a very crucial thing for founders to know, right? Because sometimes founders get pissed off. It's like, no one wants to invest in me. Well, because professional investors don't think you're venture scale, and you have to ask yourself, are you venture scale? It's not about support, it's about money. All right, so I'm about to wrap this up so she can ask me questions before she kind of kills me with her eyes. So the thing I want to say about entrepreneurship, if there's any like common denominator, anything that I've noticed that I want to pass on to you is there's this brand of entrepreneurship which is inventorship. Right? This is very common in universities. We're talking about this. And actually in the tech industry, where you create a technology breakthrough or find something neat, and you're like, there's a company here, and then you go off to the races. Don't do that. Do not do that. You have to understand that entrepreneurship is about the markets, not just about technology. In fact, there are 3 layers to a company, a real company, because you're trying to create a company, not just trying to create a product. First is the technology, the software, the code. Second is the product, which is what is the customer experience? How do people interact with this? This is so important now because technology doesn't wow anybody anymore, right? People treat it like light or like water. Does it work or does it not work? And that's all the attention they have for it. They don't have time to be like, oh, this is so cool. That lasts for 5 minutes and no one cares about that. And then the other layer of a software company or a technology company is the company itself, which is the operations, the capital, the accounting, the finance, right? If you're a founder, you have to navigate all 3 layers if you want to be a big company. And it's non-trivial to do that. Now, what is the key to getting it right? Talk to your customers, okay? No one cares about your brilliance. No one cares about your technology. All we care about, I'm talking on the capital side now, is are you solving a problem for your customer? Yes or no? How do you ensure that? You got to talk to them. You can't be so enamored with your own brilliance and with your tech that you don't talk to your customers. It's like a common malpractice. A good company, a good technology company is your brilliance intersect your knowing your customers. In fact, I tell founders all the time that they have to be telepathic with their customers. They have to be in their brain. They have to sort of try to sleep with them, and I don't mean that in a biblical way. They have to try to embody them. You have to get like, what's the word? You have to get so intimate with a problem. If you can do that, you will succeed. Every founder you know, Steve Jobs, Bezos, Gates, they knew what their customers wanted because they spent a lot of time with them. So this is the baseline of entrepreneurship. Don't get carried away, all right? Don't get too egotistical about it. Talk to your customers, figure out what they want, be willing to change your technology to fit what they need, and you'll be in a really good spot. All right, and I think that's it. There are various ways I write a lot, Substack, Twitter, LinkedIn. If you're interested, you should follow that stuff. And thank you very much. I think I'm good here.
You good there?
Yeah. Let me grab my phone.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I feel quite bad actually jumping in now and kind of disrupting the flow of your presentation, so apologies. But while you were speaking, there were a few things that kind of really stuck out to me, and I'm going to take the opportunity just to ask a few questions. I will keep it fairly brief because I have no doubt everybody here is going to want to ask some questions to you. But I want to circle back to the comment you made about venture scale.
Yeah.
And in particular around when you identify opportunities that that are scalable. When you were here last time in 2018, you spoke to this point about identifying opportunities that connect with ever-increasing variables. And when you were describing the 3 elements of a startup, I kind of thought that would be really interesting if you could dig a little bit deeper into that. And what does that actually mean? Because I think when you're trying to get into a new venture, there's so many things that are coming at you and flying at you, you can easily lose that. So Can you just give us a little bit more information about what that means?
Thank you. I feel like, as we've talked about this, that's stuck in your head. I feel very proud of myself that I came up with that one.
6 years ago.
So, yes, when I was here at Swinburne last time, I talked about the fact that the very best companies in the world their unit economics are tied to things that keep growing, right? And a good example is your local Atlassian, Atlassian, right? Why does Atlassian grow? Well, it's really simple. A lot of the hardest problems in the world from work are done by teams, and teams need coordination, right? And we are nowhere near the limits of that market, right? In fact, you could argue that it's only 20% penetrated. More and more people need to coordinate to do very complicated things, build rockets, build nuclear fusion, whatever it is. And so work management and team management the demand for that will keep growing, and therefore the demand for Atlassian's tools, if they keep innovating, will keep growing. That's an ever-increasing variable, which is people need coordination to do all the economic work that needs to be done. Google, how does Google make money? Ads, right? Through search. Think about it. But the thing that drives them is thirst for information, right? Which humans have had for 50,000 years of recorded history. So Google's business is driven by the growth of the human population, which always thirsts for knowledge, and the penetration of internet access and devices. The more those things grow, and we have never seen them come down, Google will make money. So venture scale, remember, is about you're building and solving a problem. Either you are making things cheaper so that there's more value in it, or you are making it better and giving people superpowers. But the unit economics mean that you're doing it in a way that the demand is hard to be satisfied, except either someone competes with you or someone comes with a better mousetrap while you were sleeping. So for example, Quitch, what's the opportunity for Quitch? Well, the opportunity for Quitch is learning, something that's very, very old. The changes that's happening in the world with AI, or with people having their learning right in their pocket, as Reese talked about, that's a huge trend. That's a future trend. It almost will never end, especially now that we're in the AI future. And so it's just one way to think about your business. Whatever increasing variable in the future am I naturally leaning into? And that will help you think about whether this will be a very big business or not.
You obviously have a very strong product background, and you speak very passionately about the importance of creating customer-centric businesses. And I think certainly at Swinburne, there's an increasing awareness around UI and UX and the importance of that. But the challenge sometimes remains around how to keep listening to your customer as the business grows. So given your experience in various size businesses, how do you keep that core to the business model?
Customer listening is a very specific thing. There are two flavors. One is, if you're in the product world, one is commonly called customer discovery. Customer discovery is very important for startups. I talked about talking to your customer, because it's the kind of listening that essentially helps you discover what the problems are, right, before you come up with the solutions, as opposed to you're like, yeah, I got a solution, and when I build it, they will come, right? So that's discovery. It's about finding opportunities. It's about figuring out what to actually build to solve the problem. The other kind of customer listening is probably the kind you're talking about, which is you have product market fit, or you're close. You build something, you're trying to fine tune it, and this kind of listening is the thing that is the other loop. That's the customers take a look at it and they're like, oh, we love it or we hate it, and you're listening so you can refine it. So it's great, right? And the word of mouth is great about it. The problem with listening is that it's very hard. You think about it, you're trying to build stuff, write code, talk to, like settle invoices and so on and so forth. Eventually, the things that you need to do to stay afloat crowd out the listening. And this is a problem. When I was at Microsoft, we rarely ever talked to customers. It was such a big organization, Windows. We would get a bunch of data from the support organization, but we actually did, but I don't think we did enough. Because Microsoft is fundamentally a technology company. We build tech, and we missed a lot because we built tech and we didn't talk to our customers as much as we did. So one of the things that I teach people to do is that instead of making it this thing that is hard, that you don't eventually gets harder and harder and harder, is that product people or even CEOs should build a customer listening machine, meaning that you should institute a process within your organization. By the way, if you're a startup and you don't listen to your customers, I don't know what to tell you, because you don't even need to build a machine at that point. But if you're like Amazon, you build a machine that listens to customers automatically. Like when I was at Calendly, the product people will get a meeting with customers on their calendar magically. They didn't have to do anything. You just walk up in Monday and there's the two meetings with customers on your account. Because behind the scenes, I was working with the product ops people to automate customers talking to them. And so if it appeared in the account, they just have to talk to them. So people like me have to build a customer listening machine. There's so many channels. There are like 10 channels you should listen to. Social media, App Store reviews, G2 Crowd, and all these comparison sites. You should do NPS and listen to the verbatims. When people leave your product, you should ask them why you're leaving. You should listen to that. By the way, there are proxy channels. Your support people talk to them. Why don't you listen to your support people? Your account managers talk to customers all the time. When are you listening to what they're saying? Your salespeople talk to them all the time. Why aren't you listening to what they're saying? Your researchers talk to them all the time. Why aren't you listening to what they're saying? Now, all that stuff actually, when I was at Calendly, we just piped it into Slack. We just all that text, we put it in one place, and everyone could see it scroll through, and then we did some processing of it so that we could deal with it. So, long story short, build a customer listening machine so that not everyone has to sort of spend calories trying to listen to customers, and that's the way you can keep doing it. If you don't, no one will do it.
I want to shift a little bit to investments, not just investments in terms of money, but in terms of time and energy. You clearly have a strong pedigree in that background. You talked about your time at Bridgewater. You've built billion-dollar businesses. You have your own venture studios and startups that you invest in, and you've been working with Quich and Gronya for a number of years now, as a board member and as a mentor. So, what is it that makes you want to invest your time, emotion, and energy into a startup? What is it that makes you want to devote that time and energy?
I have to say, Gronya and Quich are just grandfathered in, so I don't know if I would do that again. I've grown a lot in 5-6 years or whatever it has been. So, look, I think in many ways, I'm interested in startups and mentoring startups for two main reasons. One is they are going to break new ground, right? And if they break new ground and I'm part of it, I get to learn a lot. I get to see that happen. I get to increase the odds that they actually do break new ground and the world gets changed. So that's very important to me. But also, even if they don't break new ground, I know that it's a very important commercial opportunity. Of course, as someone who potentially could own equity in that thing, then I'm interested in that as well. So I think it's a mix of things. I'm also curious. One of my big 3 things is curiosity. And so things that are off the wall, interesting people attract me, and I maybe want to spend some time.
So I think we often also talk about the importance of having a really strong team in a startup. And there's a lot of discussion around the good to great concept of, getting the right people on the bus. When you were here last time as well, you also spoke about making sure key people had skin in the game, and you said it was something that the US ecosystem did really well, and that perhaps other startup ecosystems could learn from that. Can you go a little bit further on that and give us a bit more information about what does that actually mean? What is happening in the US that's working well that somewhere like Australia can really learn from?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when I was referring to skin in the game, it was the fact that most US startups will reward the deal you make with a startup in the US usually, if it's a venture scale startup, is you don't get paid as much as your peers who are doing the same amount of work, but you get equity so that you have a chance of getting really rich if everyone succeeds. So it aligns incentives. And so stock compensation is very, very common. When I was at Microsoft in the 2000s, there were many people who had joined earlier who were already millionaires, right? And actually, when I was at Twitter, same thing, because there's so much economic activity in the Bay Area, and people sort of go from job to job. Google to many of my colleagues were millionaires, right? They were just working for challenge. They weren't working for money anymore. And that's amazing. That's an amazing creation of wealth, right? And people in the US are accustomed to this method of doing business and these incentives, so they will join startups if they're interested enough and in the problem and the people for a chance. Remember, it's a chance. It doesn't mean that it works out. There are many times I've joined companies that the equity has turned to nothing. So you have to understand that it's a probability. But people understand that, and so they're used to it. And actually, when they are in those startups, especially in the early stage, they work their asses off because they understand that even like an hour of effort might make the difference between success and failure, right? And so it creates this insane energy around startups in the United States. In lots of, I've worked in lots of countries around the world, and it's not like this everywhere. Like people just want to earn whatever, like give me a fair wage, work in a startup. But in the US, people understand the trade-off and they'll do things differently. And so I think that's very important. Well, is it very important? I think that's key. And sometimes people talk about exploitation and so on and so forth, but the workers don't think about it that way. Look, when I was at Microsoft, which was a very mature company at the time, but I was 21 years old, I had a couch in my office, and if I needed to, I would just spend 2 days working straight up. Very few countries, this is a culture. But if I had a hard problem to solve, I would stay there. They had showers, gym, basketball, food, and I would just work. And it was okay. The culture was okay to do that. So that's what's special about the US, is that people are willing to, if they think there's an outsized reward, they will just put in the time. And that's very special. And so people share the wealth through equity. People give back a lot through work, and sometimes that's what it takes. I guess that's what I wanted to do. And you can't do it forever. I was 21. I have nothing at stake. I won't do it today, maybe, except I'm particularly motivated. But I think it's a cultural thing.
In the essence of time and not wanting to be too selfish with the questions, I'm going to ask one last question.
Sure.
Go off-piste slightly with this one. But while I was digging around the corners of the internet looking at information for the discussion tonight, I came across an interview that you did, I think it was Product Boards Behind the Roadmap. Mm-hmm. And you and your partner were both being product leaders, were interviewed. And there was a particular question that really sparked my interest, and it was about asking whether you thought, given both you and your partner both in product, whether you thought your children would get into product management. And your response was that you hoped they became entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really lovely thing. I think possibly there's a lot of people who get a different message, perhaps from their parents, for all the challenges and things that we've talked about here tonight. So what is it that you think is really appealing about being an entrepreneur?
Is anyone here economics major or something? What are the three means of production? So, if I remember correctly, it is capital, labor, and is it land? Land, okay, right. And actually, this is maybe like a critique of our educational system, right? Like, most of people on the planet are brought up to be the labor side of that equation, right? And only very few become capital, and certainly land is what it is. And that's literally what, you're born, you go to elementary school, whatever, and they're like, get good grades because you're gonna get a good job. You're gonna be a doctor and so on and so forth. And for the longest time, that's how I thought about my life, obviously. Like I was really good at school. I can tell you that right now. So I got really good grades. And the thing I realized over time, and part of what I'm trying to do next for the next phase of my life is I've done the labor piece. I've done it excellently. And actually, it's worked out in terms of my career and my ability to do things, take care of my family and so on and so forth. But I don't want to be labor anymore. And actually, I don't want my children to be part of that either. I mean, they're going to school right now, but I'm not raising them to be, to work in anyone's salt mines. Like, what I want to do is encourage, by the way, they could totally not listen to me. And they could totally want like a very chill life and just like go to work and live a good life, which you can afford in most Western economies. But the thing that I want for them is, when are you building your venture scale company? And would you give me a chance to invest in you, right? I'm sure you'd be so brilliant that your round will be completely, but just as your dad, give me a break and let me get into it. Right? So that's why I hope it is for them. Because I think that, I went to business school at Columbia, Berkeley, like the capital side isn't as hard as people think it is, right? It's a mindset. It's about understanding how it works. And so I want to pass on to them how it works so they can decide. Because most people don't get to actually decide, right? This is just the path they're given. I want to show them all the paths so it's a choice that they make. And so that's why I made that comment.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up now to the floor. So I think we'll have a microphone going around, and we've got a second one if we need it. So if anyone would like to take the opportunity to ask a question, please feel free to put your hand up.
Hi. So I've got a question as to, in your entrepreneurial journey, have you had any great mentors? And what's one piece of advice that's really stuck with you that they've given you and that's really helped you?
That's a good question. Actually, one of my failures is that I haven't had as many mentors as I should, right? Or I've had remote mentors. When I was in Nigeria, even before I came to the United States, I was inspired by Bill Gates. I read everything he wrote, his book. In those days, when there was Microsoft, so he used to write like a monthly letter to all the Microsoft certified people. It was brilliant. But obviously, I've met him in real life, but he was never like my close-up mentor. I discovered this deficiency years ago, and I started collecting better mentors over time. I only talk about this because it's a mistake. You should try to create a board of directors of mentors around yourself as early as you can. Every one of us needs something to succeed, wisdom, apprenticeship, and so on and so forth. What is the thing that they have said to me that makes a difference? I can't think of one thing, right? The great thing about mentors is they say a lot of things to you, and sometimes you watch them and see how they solve problems and the choices they make. One of my greatest mentors, paradoxically, was a friend who went to high school, but by the time I got to Microsoft was already super successful. And then he started his own company. And he's actually one of the people who started me on an entrepreneurial journey, because I saw him leave Microsoft at his peak and and start a company. I'm like, what the hell is that about? Like, why are you doing that? And I ended up doing that years later. And why did I do that years later? I saw someone do it, if that makes sense. And in fact, some of the greatest lessons he gave me was, I did the other thing. Like, he made choices in his personal life, and I looked at that, and when that same choice came, I did the other thing, because I didn't think it quite worked out for him. So, so it was anti-inspiration, if that makes sense.
Questions?
Oji, thank you very much. That was an excellent interview, Rachel did. Can you explain why you've changed so many different organisations? What was the motivation behind it, is one thing. And do you think innovation and entrepreneurship can help to save this planet in the next 100 years?
The changes haven't always been super intentional. I stayed 2 years at Atlassian, and the reason I left was because the competition for the work messaging market got intense when Microsoft entered with Teams. Slack never IPO'd because the competition from Microsoft was so intense. They had to just sell to Salesforce. And so Atlassian saw that coming and sold a lot of the IP to Slack and just moved on. They're like, we're not going to spend millions trying to fight Microsoft, Salesforce. Calendly happened because, again, another couple of years, because actually, I'm such a crazy person. I was traveling to Atlanta almost every week for 2 years because I refused to move to their HQ in Atlanta. I loved Austin. I wasn't going to move. And after a while, it got old to keep doing that. It was crazy. I left Twitter because Elon came in here and I knew it was going to be a shit show. So some of them have, look, I spent over 10 years at Microsoft, so it's not like I love to, but some of those stints were very useful. I got like a good dose of learning, mistakes, wins, and then I got to go practice somewhere else. So I wouldn't say they were super intentional. I think what's super intentional is choosing great companies in the first place, in some fashion. Now, the question was about entrepreneurship save the planet. I'm a big believer in the ability of one person, man or woman, to change the world. And you can see this throughout history. Obviously, people, classical Western history, the usual suspects, whether it's Alexander the Great or Napoleon and so on. But these are all individuals who managed to gather a lot of power and influence. The entire world has these stories, whether it's in Japan, in China and India, and so on and so forth, that are less well known. And so a very determined and persuasive person can often change the world. And it's sort of the lens I look at entrepreneurship. The downside of entrepreneurship is that it's so tainted with the money motive that I don't know that entrepreneurs can change the world because they are basically compromised in certain ways. You have to really be dedicated to humanity in order to really change the world in a fair way, I think. But yes, entrepreneurs can change the world, but sometimes it's to the bad and sometimes it's to the good. That's what I think.
Thank you.
Other
Yeah.
questions?
Good response.
I'll jump in. Given what you said about AI as a personal assistant and my future fear that AI is an advertising-fed personal assistant is a different problem, what's the future of labour look like in, say, 5 years and 10 years when AI is much more mature and instead of hiring people, I can just use AIs for my startup?
That's a good one. So I predict that two things are going to happen with AI. One is, what's the difference between riding a chariot and riding a car, right? Riding a car gives you more time, lets you traverse greater distances without breakups. And so the net effect of that is you can do more, right? And, we don't have horses anymore. So if you invented a car and someone had a horse, they'd be like, oh my God, all the people who look after horses are going to be out of a job. But the net effect of technology, which is what it is it raises human productivity. It lets us do more complicated stuff. Recently, one of the big problems humanity has to solve is cheap energy, right? And the most important, the most direct path to cheap energy is fusion. That is not IP encumbered, meaning that anyone in the world from Guam to Nigeria can build a fusion reactor if they know how to do it, because no one company said, this is my intellectual property. Just like solar energy, like no one really has control over solar energy. You can build solar panels, and that's amazing. Recently, one of the problems with fusion is you have to use plasma, and under certain circumstances, you can't generate net energy gain, right? Because people don't understand plasma as well as they understand other states of matter. Well, they fed a model to an AI, and it showed how to get over that plasma problem, right? So what does that? It unlocks productivity and complexity that we can solve. So look, in the short run, there will be job loss and all kinds of things because we'll be able to do more with less. In the long run, the species will be able to do more complicated shit, right? And become, solar system scale species. I don't know how long that will take. And that's good for everybody. But in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of creative destruction along the way. And so, and then it will shift to policy, meaning that humans have to say, okay, we're making more, we're richer, we can feed most people on the planet, maybe like 5% of the world can feed 100% of the world. So what does that mean? It means that maybe we should change capitalism, right? Everyone deserves something regardless of whether you make anything or not, because a small portion of us can. And if you look at the Star Trek and all these space things, no one works, right? They just print food, print clothes as designers because they have the technology to do it. So why would they force everyone to work? I think the downside is that humans are quite selfish, and maybe we won't do it that way, and we'll sort of punish people who are not AI literate, and it'll be a shit show. Sorry, well, you guys are Aussies, so I'm fine with that. So I think the point is, it's good for the species long term. In the short, mid-term, we don't know how we will handle it given our selfish natures. I think that's the problem.
Can I add a qualifier?
Sure.
Because the labour loss or shortage or otherwise is less where I was going. I've already been pitched to startups by founders who don't have staff and have no plans to hire.
Right.
And so I'm wondering whether they're missing out the opportunity for diversity and thinking and perspective and reach that capability. And so I'm seeing these startups.
No. AI isn't there at all. I mean, where is the Aboriginal content that used to train AI? Where is the African content? Where is the Icelandic content? Where's the Asian content? If you basically looked at all the content on the internet, where is it from? So that means that AI, because it's trained on content, is not fair, right? It doesn't have the knowledge of the world yet. It just has the knowledge of people who have put content on the internet. And so yes, AI will be biased, narrow-minded, and so on and so forth if you rely on it alone right now. It'll probably get better, but maybe it will take some time. The reality is that in the short run, AI is still super unreliable. It hallucinates. If you really try to run a business on AI, you will probably crash your company anyway. So let them do it if they want. That's fine. In the short run, it'll get better.
I think we've got time for one more question. If there's one, right down the back.
I have a friend who writes all of her speeches using ChatGPT, and I've heard some of her speeches, and I'm kind of skeptical that AI is capable of kind of doing those kind of social tasks better than humans can. So my question to you is, do you think that there are sort of categories of labor or pathways that AI will never be able to touch or be able to outcompete humans in?
There's this holy grail we talk about in AI called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, which is, no one even has a good definition for it, but roughly it is AI that can create new knowledge from first principles. that's scary smart, because not even many humans can do that, right? Right? That's scary smart. That's PhD level smart. And so the way you should think about this isn't what's happening now, it's what will happen in the next little while. This is the worst AI will ever be. So your friend doing the speech thing, this is the worst that speeches will ever be. In a year, they will be better than what she could have written, right? Or maybe in 2 years or 10 years, I don't know how long. And so will there be places where AI will not touch? Probably unlikely. Like I said, it's like human level intelligence that you have access to. So it's really a question of what do you do with it, if that makes sense. Look, humans, we're more complicated than large language models, right? I won't call it magic because I don't want to be mystical, but there are things that we know and solve that they won't be able to solve. But it might not be in the realm of work, because work isn't that mysterious, really. Like, everything in the enterprise, there may be 1,000 ways to do it, but 9,950 of those are not very efficient anyway. So all that AI has to do is figure out the 50 ways that are efficient and make everyone do it that way, and boom, Bob's your uncle. And but in life, in relationship, in socializing, and empathy, and all these other really complicated, nuanced problems, in kindness, in social survival, in sacrifice, will an AI be able to do those things? Probably not. And so I think what will happen is we'll be very good at what we are good at, and an AI will become the metaphor is an android, right? It does things, scut work, that we don't have to do anymore. Yeah, and people are afraid that this stuff will create Skynet and so on and so forth. Look, intelligence doesn't mean evil, right? I don't think it does. Otherwise, Einstein would have taken over the world and killed us all, because he was so much smarter. And he didn't do that. He was a very, very chill dude. It might happen, but maybe it might not happen, if that makes sense. So this is the worst AI will ever be. You should expect it to 5x, 10x, 100x, because all you do is have to throw silicon at it. And so don't be skeptical because of what it does today. That's not the right way to think about it.
And on that note, somewhat reluctantly, I'm going to draw a close to the somewhat formal proceedings tonight, and thank Oji so much for your generosity in time and expertise. And I'd also like to thank Gronya and for Quich for letting us have some of his time here. It's a short time, so thank you very much. And if you could all join me in thanking him. And we invite you to stick around for a while and have some more conversations, meet some more people, and join us for something to drink and to eat, and hopefully we can keep the conversation going. Thank you very much tonight.